In the past couple of weeks, we've produced a couple of videos on the Canada Bay Council Pedestrian Access and Mobility Plan, or PAMP. Now, this isn't another video on the PAMP. Instead, this is having a look at what streets could look like if we made them a lot safer. Now, we all know about the iceberg analogy, that 90% of the iceberg sits under the water. And looking at this, the PAMP is this little bit that sticks out over the top, and the bit that we really should be worrying about is this huge mass underneath, which is traffic speeds. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through a redevelopment in East Perth. The reason I'm doing that is because I'm in Perth at the moment and I've ridden around it quite a bit. And what they've done is essentially flattened an old brownfields area, bulldozed everything apart from a few heritage bits and pieces, and completely rebuilt all the streets, infrastructure and buildings. And if you ask me, they've done a pretty good job on doing it. So let's ride through it and have a look at why this is a nice, safe area to get around. I think there's two very obvious features of this redevelopment. The first thing is they've clearly used the modern transport hierarchy. People or pedestrians are definitely at the top of the hierarchy, and private motor vehicles have been put down the bottom. The other thing is the application of the movement and place framework. What you're going to see here is a mix of the bottom two quadrants. So on the left you've got the local streets, and on the right you've got places for people. And the two go together really, really well. There's no vibrant streets here. And personally, I think vibrant streets are an absolute unicorn. The idea of mixing lots of cars and lots of people, I can't think of a single example anywhere where that works. You've got to have one or the other. I guess this is what you call the central feature of the area. You've got all these 4-story apartments, or I guess you call them apartments, around this water feature. And I think they had to dig this water feature out. I can't see this on the old maps. And so the housing, you notice a nice garage there, 2 cars in it. So there's no shortage of private parking. They just don't want you parking on the streets. And here, notice how a lot of the streets have been paved with brick, and across there they've differentiated it to show a clear walking path across here. The other thing to notice is have a look at the curbs. There's concrete curbs, but essentially all the curbs are pram ramps. They're just one continuous pram ramp. There isn't a 8 centimetre lip or so that you'd trip over if you're stepping across it. Now, the red brick there just denotes that's a pedestrian crossing, so to speak. And that's fairly common around here as well. Going through this sports oval or open space, you can see lots of families, lots of bikes, lots of pedestrians. And when we go into the car park, it's all red brick. We go to the roundabout, it's brick again, but it's a different colour. So they can clearly show, that there's a roundabout there, and and the parking area is a different colour, I guess, and brick to show, well, slow down in the car park. Over on the left there, that's the Mataranga Bridge. That goes across to the Optus Stadium. It's a good area if you like your footy. But let's go and have a ride down one of these streets. And you can see, look, it's a reasonable width, but there are car parking spaces on the side. But look at what I was saying about the pram ramps. Essentially, you could run a pram, a bicycle, a wheelchair, a wheelie walker, even a shopping trolley across that pram ramp without any difficulty. I mean, you could drive a car over it as well, but, because drivers aren't going around here terribly fast, you don't really need a barrier to stop them from going over the curb. Now, they do have tall curbs on corners, I guess, to stop people cutting the corners, but that's a different thing. Now, notice how narrow the street is here where we went into it. They've deliberately pushed out the curbs to make a nice narrow street, and again, it's all pram ramps. Now, the pram ramps are quite visible, or pram ramp curbs, I should say. They're quite typical in these residential streets. In the busier streets, which are a little bit faster, you'll notice the kind of traditional taller curbs. What they've done is had all the garages put in these laneways at the back, and see, the laneways are just cheap asphalt. Horrible, ugly. No one's ever going to be walking through here. It's only people driving through here to park their cars or, take their rubbish bins out. The servants' entrance, maybe, so to speak. But again, speed in the laneways is, not terribly fast. Red asphalt's been used quite extensively as well. Again, saying to drivers, red asphalt is, it's a slow area, use caution, slow down, don't go tearing through here. This is a busier, higher speed road on the edge of the development, but it quickly goes back into using bricks to slow people down at the roundabouts. And notice the red asphalt's used on the side there for parking and a bike lane as well. Red brick is used down here, and notice how the street narrows at the very end, so drivers don't come screaming down into this section where there's going to be a lot of pedestrian and cyclist activity, obviously. So there's lots and lots of engineering here which says slow down, slow down, slow down. Red brick all the way along here, and why would you be zooming along here? You've got this great view out to the side here. It's a residential area. People are probably going to be coming down here looking for a parking spot. There's no need to enable them to fly around the place. What they're doing is, they're going to be looking to park, presumably, to come over here to this cafe strip. Actually, the biggest parking problem here is really not with cars, it's with bicycles, because I guess the architects completely underestimated the demand for bike parking. Now, family here, kids wearing helmets, parents aren't. That's fairly normal in these areas as well. Everyone's in casual clothes. Why do you need to wear helmets if you're an adult? So I'm going to show you where the pedestrians really are at the top of the food chain around here. This bridge has a sign on it saying, cyclists, you've got to walk your bikes across. It's a pedestrian-only bridge. Yeah, when they say, when they're looking at the hierarchy going, yeah, pedestrians are on top, cyclists are next, they really mean it. So, we've had a look at that. You can obviously see the movement and place strategy there. Lots of places for people. The local streets are nicely calmed. I think it's been quite well done. And it just shows, potentially what we could do to make our existing streets safer to walk around. So what are the really good takeaways from this? Well, firstly, brick is very effective at making the streets look really nice, as well as slowing drivers down. The other thing we can take away from this is continuous pram ramps, as you might call them, rather than sticky uppy curbs, are really quite effective. And they look good as well. Different coloured brick works as well. Red brick to show where pedestrians are crossing is a pretty good idea. You can also use different colour bricks to show parking areas from roundabouts. You don't have to build everything in brick. I think brick's more expensive and harder to maintain. You can use asphalt on the busier roads where there's more traffic and more wear and tear. But you don't have to use black asphalt. You can use red asphalt to show an area for parking and bike lanes, and black asphalt for where people are supposed to be driving. Now, that helps to narrow the road, so people naturally are not going to be inclined to speed so much. Look at how wide this road reservation is from curb to curb. It's really a very wide road, and if you didn't use visual tricks like different coloured asphalts, drivers would see this as a drag strip and go tearing down here at high speed. Essentially, giving over 40 or 50% of the road to red asphalt narrows the black asphalt so considerably, drivers are going to naturally slow down. Now, on top of that, what they've done is put in these built-out curb sections at regular intervals in the parking sections and planted trees and shrubs. And that also has the visual effect of narrowing the street, bringing down driver speeds. And from what I've seen, it's very effective. I mean, these are fairly simple measures, and yes, it takes up parking spaces, but what's more important, speed or safety? Well, clearly here they've said safety is the most important thing. Parking, can go to hell. Well, it's not going to hell. We're just going to have less parking. We're going to trade off some parking for safety. Again, they've narrowed the entrance and exits from the residential streets, so drivers go into and come out of these streets much more slowly. And bike parking is a bit of an issue. They didn't put in anywhere near enough. They've probably only got about 1/10 of what's actually required, which is not a bad thing. I mean, I don't think they expected it to be as successful as it has been, but there's a lesson learned. If you build it properly, people will come.